Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video, we're going to have the Retribution Paladin preseason PvE guide for the War Within. And by preseason, I mean we have a long time before the actual season starts in September. And so if you're just kind of wanting to get your bearings, get your stuff straight, this is a guide for you. This was actually a suggestion I had. I thought it was actually a pretty good suggestion. So I figured I'd make this for anybody. Maybe you're coming back to Paladin. Maybe you're just trying to know how the buttons work even a little bit. This can be a little bit for you. So what's going to be different from this and the normal guide, like the guide we're going to get for Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, etc., is that with this guide, we aren't going to be quite as serious about every little min-max thing. I always say in the intro of my guide videos that it's supposed to be for casuals and hardcore players to some extent. Well, this is definitely going to be a little bit more aired on the casual side because this is preseason. This doesn't even apply to everybody. What we'll do is we'll start with things. We'll go in the normal order, and just so happens to be that the things at the start are a little bit more pertinent to this kind of situation, and then the things towards the end are not. So we'll kind of go through slowly the things that actually matter, like what talents to pick, and then we will just kind of rattle off the last few things that don't really truly matter for the preseason here before the actual season begins in September. So let's go ahead and start with stats. So the first thing you're going to notice when you hit 80 is that your stats are all really, really low. Okay, that's going to be the case for everybody. So generally speaking, mastery is definitely your best stat, right? And as we get into Season 1, Season 2, we're going to prioritize that probably a little bit more. However, your haste is going to be really low probably. If you're like me, your crit's really low. So your haste and crit are also important to get up to like a playable level. For example, 12% haste, it's playable, but it really doesn't feel that fun to play. And of course, that ends up affecting DPS as well. Whether that's just getting enough finishers into your execution sentence or something, right? It ends up affecting your playstyle as well. So you can kind of feel free to get some haste and crit as long with mastery right now, early on here. Basically, I wouldn't worry about your stats too much right now. But like if you're kind of like plotting like how am I gonna shape my gear up, you probably want to get some haste and crit up if it's low like mine. If you can't see, my haste is 12, my crit's 13. You probably want to get that up a little bit, whereas my mastery is 37%. That's actually probably not a bad place to be at right now this early, but want to get those other numbers up a little bit. So don't worry about that. Versatility is going to be the biggest change from Dragonflight. Versatility is really not going to matter. At some point, verse might be good if your mastery just gets so high that it's like not giving you returns on it anymore. Like at some point in the expansion, maybe then versatility would come into play. But versatility is not going to be a main stat for us in this expansion compared to Dragonflight. So that's kind of where you want to go with that. So when you're getting a new ring or you're getting a new necklace or you're deciding if you want to get something crafted or whatever, a safe bet would be like haste mastery. But then like let's say your haste is up in the 20s and your crit's still at 12 or 13. Then maybe you want to get something with crit on it as well, right? So you do want to get these to like a playable number. And it's hard. I don't want to use the term that I'm about to use here, but there's like soft caps on things, generally speaking, in this game. And while Rep might not have an actual soft cap or whatever, you do kind of want to get to these certain little breakpoints that allow you to fit an extra cooldown in, or and it just feels better to play as well. Like I said, they kind of marry each other where it feels better to play and can also increase your damage as well. So that's kind of what you're thinking of for stats. Next, let's move on to talents. So talents, we'll take a little bit of time to go through the talents. We're going to go through 3 different types of talents. We're going to go through pure single target. We're going to go through Mythic plus overall damage, and we're going to go through Mythic plus Templar spec. So before we even get into those different builds, let's talk about Templar versus Herald of the Sun. So Templar is going to be a single target and cleave type of hero talent. It also cleaves very, very well. Herald of the Sun is primarily going to be used only for AoE. Really, for the preseason, Herald of the Sun's probably not going to be used that much. That being said, it is the preseason. If you want to play with it, now's the time to play with it. When you're going to get the value of Herald of the Sun is when you're pulling a lot of mobs and they stay alive for a good amount of time. If mobs are dying instantly, then you might as well just use Templar anyways, even if you're pulling big. Because you're going to get just that flat damage of the Hammer of Light, which is the main ability. for Templar instead of the prolonged burning damage of Sun's avatar from Herald of the Sun. So this is the time to play around with it, like I said. But generally speaking, in the preseason, we're going to be using Templar. I will go over Herald of the Sun AOE spec as well. But generally speaking, for this entire preseason, Templar is going to be best for pretty much all content. That's delves, that's regular dungeons, that's single target. There's no raids in the preseason. But generally speaking, for this type of content, Templar is going to be best. Also for just outdoor world stuff, Hammer of Light just hits really hard and kills, 3 or 4 mobs, right? So this is generally going to be the best thing to use, and it's also going to be good later on in the expansion too. It's not just the preseason that it's good, but especially here in the preseason, Templar is going to be good. You kind of just fill out the points here how you want. I always like to go, we'll talk about the Templar side here. I always like to go with the Charger. I liked For Whom the Bell Tolls. That's pure single target, right? And then if you're not doing pure single target, you just pick the other one, Zealous Vindication. And then Sanctification is generally considered a better choice as well there. But there's Endless Wrath as well. So it's not, none of these are like huge game-changing things, but obviously if one's like, oh, it only works when you're hitting one target, then that would be used like in a raid where you're hitting one target, right? And in every other case, you'd probably want to use the one that does something when you're hitting more than one target. Kind of a little bit obvious if you read the tooltips, but figured we'd go through it anyways. When we come here, so this is pure single target. When we're looking at this side of the tree, we'll assume that some people are like new to playing Ret that might be watching this, and so we're just picking up the damage nodes mostly, right? I'll try to import these or put the import strings in the description below because I don't want to go through literally every single talent on here. I know sometimes there's some issues with those import strings, but I will do what I can. So we're basically just making sure we pick all the damage talents. So you start with Greater Judgment, you grab Justification, you're always going to want to have Sanctified Plates and your Avenging Wrath, Holy Aegis for critical strike chance, and then you can grab Touch of Light. It's not even necessary to if you want another, like or a utility type ability. Unbreakable Spirit's really good. And then when we get down here, this is where it's a little bit different from Dragonflight. And you're going to go down and grab Seal of Might, Dusk and Dawn, Fading Light, or Seal of Order. Seal of Order is actually going to be the damage one there. I still had that from my leveling build on. So you're going to want to, generally speaking, have Seal of Order on for damage, Divine Toll, Divine Resonance, 2 points, and Seal of the Crusader. And then the difference between this and Dragonflight is Divine Purpose versus Vengeful Wrath. Now, I'm not sure. I'm guessing this is better because right now, Hammer of Light with Templar is actually, you're able to use your Hammer of Light into the Divine Purpose proc. And I don't know if that's intended or not, so that could change. Like, this talent point could change. Again, this is the preseason, doesn't matter too much. We'll go over that when we're talking about rotational stuff as well, though. I think that may be the reason why that it's performing a little bit better. And then when we look over here at the Ret side, again, it's going to be very, very similar to Dragonflight. We're going to grab everything here. So some choice nodes that you might want to go over. Same thing, Swift Justice, just like Dragonflight. Over here, we're going to have Improved Blade of Justice. One difference, we are going to grab Judgments of the Just here. That's something I played around with beta with a decent amount. And what I will say, there's a lot of talents here that do very similar damage to each other, like within a couple percent or within a percent. And so as long as you have the main abilities, you can, again, this is the preseason, play around with some stuff if you like to. Here we grab Final Verdict. That's your choice, but I always pick Guided Prayer here. Art of War. We want the attack speed increase. We have Vanguard's Momentum for our Hammer of Wrath. We have, I have the wrong one selected here, Rush of Light for our single target damage. And then a new talent, Holy Flames. We can actually choose this as well, mostly because it does 3% increased holy damage, and so it's just a flat damage increase. And maybe the other talent does 1 or 2% or whatever. This does 3% holy damage, and that's pretty much all your damage. So that works out for you there. We want Crusading Strikes. That goes with the attack speed of Zealot's Fervor. Boundless Judgment. Down here we have Empyrean Legacy. and then High Lord's Wrath. A similar talent build could have like Empyrean Legacy and Judgment of Justice off and 2 points in Heart of the Crusader. But since they're all passive, you might as well just take... Because in some builds in the previously, you know, Heart of the Crusader, I kind of like taking that. But, you know, these are all passive, so it doesn't really matter. This one's going to be a little bit more damage. Wake of Ashes taken. And then you're going to take everything on the left side. You're going to take Shield of Vengeance, Execution Sentence, Executioner's Will, and then everything that modifies your Wake of Ashes down here in this triangle. Again, I will go over, or I will put the link in the description below because it's just too many talents to go over. I mean, we would be here all day if I went over every single talent. Let's go to Mythic plus Templar. So we're not going to be doing Mythic plus in the preseason, so this will be kind of like your dungeon build if you're doing dungeons. So this is going to be pretty darn similar to even a big AoE build. This is kind of the suggested build from Wowhead, and you know, it's very close to the build that I'll be showing you next, which is more of my build. But this is very good for this type of content. Stuff's going to be dying fast, even if you're pulling big. Stuff's just falling over dead in the dungeons that you're running, and so on like normal dungeons and stuff like that. So again, we're going to be focusing on Templar. You actually do not want To Whom the Bell Tolls for this particular one because you're going to be hitting more than one target. So you can switch that one out, for example. Then we get over here, almost everything's the same, with a few little changes, right? I didn't even go over. We have Crusade picked instead of Might, and that's in every single build. Judgment of Just is not selected, right? So that's a difference. Empyrean Legacy is also not selected. Those 2 points are basically going into Tempest of the Lightbringer. And then we're also picking Blessed Champion so we can cleave. We also do want to take Empyrean Power down here. And then we also are switching off of Holy Flames to go to Blade of Edges, which is, again, better for AoEing. And then, so basically there's only one contention that I have here. And again, if you're pulling big, even in these little dungeons, like, stuff's going to die so fast. So you might, so basically, do you want to do boss damage or do you just want to kill all the ads faster? If you want to kill all the ads faster, pick Final Reckoning. And if you want to do boss damage in this early preseason, then take Execution Sentence. And do not take Executioner's Will because it'll never go off because stuff dies way too fast right now for that. So, and then you do not take Arbiter. Instead, you're putting all 3 points into this side here, which is, again, more AoE focused. A lot of this is just heavily AoE focused. And, you know, while still using your Templar, which is cleaving, it's not full AoEing, but it is cleaving and doing a lot of damage that way. So, again, we'll link those below. And then lastly, let's just talk about Herald of the Sun build real quick here. This is only going to be a build that, for the most part, that you're going to use in Mythic Plus later on, and especially in weekly keys or in keys where you are not, where you want to be, you know, the top damage doer or whatever. So basically the difference is, first of all, we're playing Herald of the Sun. It's going to modify our Divine Storm a lot. You notice it's almost exactly the same. The only real difference is that Final Reckoning pick there, and pretty much everything else is the same. Herald of the Sun is a big change, right? It's a big change changing which hero talent you're using for content, but it's the same exact build, except for we're pretty much always going to pick Final Reckoning with this build, because this build is presuming that things are living long enough, right? We're presuming it's living long enough to justify us picking Herald of the Sun as our hero talent, and therefore things are going to be living long enough for us to put a lot of Divine Storms into our Final Reckoning and all that kind of stuff. So it's basically the same build, but Herald of the Sun. If you don't know what Sun's Avatar does, again, I encourage you to try these out while you can here, right, in the preseason. So Sun's Avatar basically, what Herald of the Sun does, it puts Dawn Light on your enemies. It's a dot. Herald of the Sun connects you to the enemies that are dotted with a beam of fire. You can then make that beam of fire pass through however many enemies that there are. If you're pulling 20 mobs, you can burn all 20 mobs with multiple beams of fire, if you can position it correctly, and it does quite a bit of damage. Now, if things are dying instantly, well, then it's not doing as much damage, is it? Because you're not getting the full duration of it. But if things are staying alive and you are getting the full duration of it, it does quite a bit of damage. And that's why I definitely, and that's going to be a difference between me if you use Wildhead or whatever. For Mythic Plus, I'm going to be suggesting using this unless you're in a team and the team wants you to do more single target damage. But for your generally weekly Mythic Plus keys, it'll be Herald of the Sun. Now this build is not going to be super useful right now in the preseason, but I'll still put it below in case you want to play around with it, or you know, whatever. Just try it out in a dungeon, and maybe you can just see what I mean by things are dying too fast for your Sun's avatar to actually do anything to them. But you can try that out perhaps as well. Next up, so that's all the talent stuff. Let's talk about ability priority, basically like rotational kind of stuff, right? Let's go to single target. We're going to focus on single target. I'll mention a caveat with AoEing and stuff. But with single target, basically what you're going to do, so I also need to show you the Divine Purpose thing with Hammer of Light. So we're in Templar, right? We're in single target. We're basically in a raid spec, right? So the number one ability you're going to want to use for building, right? For building up Holy Power is going to be Judgment. That's just because it gives you 2 Holy Power. And then in execute range, your Hammer of Wrath will also give you 2 Holy Power. And so that it becomes more important. But generally speaking, let's just talk about on the opener. So you know what? Eventually you will not have your tier set, I should say. You probably still have your tier set now. But you're going to build up the 5 Holy Power as fast as you can. You're going to Execution Sentence. You're going to... Oops. I'm hitting this on the wrong side. And I'm dying. I need to go find a better training dummy. Hold on. Before I kill myself. I guess I could just stand behind it. Alright, so we're going to build up to 5. We're going to use Execution Sentence, which I already used. Final Verdict. And then our Wake of Ashes. Now, if we had our Divine Purpose up, it would be great, because then it would be free. So I just Divine Purpose on that. And then we're going to feed as many finishers into our Execution Sentence as possible. We'll do it one more time with the extra Execution Sentence on it. I want to talk about one difference that you might be able to make here. So you can also start with your Divine Toll if you like. I want to play around with this more, and I luckily have until the first season to do so before I like 100% say it. But basically you can start with your Divine Toll. This gets the Ring and Clarity going, and it might allow you to get an extra spender into your Execution Sentence. However, there's a caveat with that as well, and that with all the Divine Purposes and stuff, like let's say you get multiple Divine Purpose procs, you're spamming that button, and so it's not even going to matter necessarily that happens. So you could actually, instead of starting off with like a Blade of Justice, right? We can start with Blade to get our burn on it. Into Judgment, you can actually go Blade into Divine Toll if you like. For now, for me, I'm still putting my Divine Toll into my Execution Sentence. I'm not getting a ton of value on the Ring and Clarity, and that could be an issue. But that's something I'm gonna play around with more during this preseason, and you know I'll have a for sure answer by the season 1 guide for sure. So let's go scroll through this again. Maybe I guess we probably won't. I guess maybe I can just do this until I get Divine Purpose. Let's do that. Let's get a Divine Purpose proc. Okay, so let's say you have your Divine Purpose ready. You can actually use your Hammer of Light, and you can see I still kept all 5 of my Holy Power there, which is really, really nice. So I wanted to get that on here just to kind of show you, because that's kind of like the best case scenario. Now you don't want to hold your, as a Rep Paladin, especially in this current state, you don't want to hold your abilities forever while you're doing this. But it does make sense to hold it for like a second or two, right? If you just have to hold stuff for a second or two, it is okay to do that. You just don't want to hold it constantly. But it is fine to hold a little bit. And now let's just focus on doing the actual pressing of the buttons, right? So we're gonna Execution Sentence, we're gonna Verdict, we're gonna Wake, we're gonna Hammer of Light. So I got a Divine Purpose there, whatever. Normally I would then Divine Toll, more spenders, and then your Execution Sentence hits. So now we're just prioritizing our Judgment, especially if our Blade of Justice or our Expert is already on the dot. You do want to keep that dot rolling, but it's not super, it's pretty easy to keep rolling, so you don't have to manage it too much, you don't have to babysit it too much. And then Hammer of Wrath is going to be the least important thing. So it's kind of like Judgment because it's 2 holy power, Blade because it's strong, and you do want to keep your dot on it. And then Hammer of Wrath is kind of like your 3rd priority right now when it comes to your builders. And then, of course, you'll just do the same thing in 30 seconds. 30 seconds is up. I'm going to have 5 holy power. I'm going to Execution Sentence. I'm going to Verdict. I'm going to Wake into Hammer of Light, Divine Toll, Verdict, Judge, Verdict, Blade, a free Hammer of Light, Verdict, Verdict, Judge, Verdict, Blade, Verdict, and you just kind of do like that. It's like, if you're new to it, that might seem confusing, but it becomes really, really easy. At the end of the day, you're only hitting like 8 buttons here, so eventually you'll kind of just get the flow of it as long as you know the priority. So again, it's generally speaking Judgment, Blade, Hammer of Wrath, and you do want to keep your bleed up, your X-Purg up from your blade. So that is another thing to keep in mind as well. So that's generally how it goes. When it comes to AoE, it's kind of the same thing. You want to get your Final Reckoning down, then put as much stuff into it as you possibly can. So you're going to be Divine Storming instead of Final Verdicting. So you're going to be AoEing, obviously, instead of single targeting. That's pretty obvious. The only difference is now, because you're going to have... in a multi-target build, you're going to have Blade of Vengeance, which your Blade AoEs, your Blade cleaves. You're going to want to put Blade above Judgment. So that's pretty much the only difference, right? So we're putting Final Reckoning down if you're playing Final Reckoning. We're Divine Storming instead of Final Verdicting. And Blade becomes our most important builder, followed by Judgment, then Hammer of Wrath. And a lot of times in Mythic Plus, other than bosses, you're barely ever hitting your Hammer of Wrath button. And so that's just kind of how that goes. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. I always am worried I'm going to confuse new players when I go over rotational things. I will say this in closing on this portion is that for Ret, the ability priority does not matter too much. What matters most is not wasting holy power, right? Don't have 5 holy power and press Judgment. You know, that's, you just wasted 2 holy power. Don't waste holy power and get as many finishers into either your Execution Sentence or your Final Reckoning as possible. If you do those things, you'll be on the right track and you can fine tune it from there. And I always just worry that, you know, a less hardcore player will get confused by that stuff. Tier sets. So let's talk about tier set a little bit. So we don't have access to Season 1 tier sets, but we still have access to our old tier sets. Our old tier set's actually pretty decently strong. I took mine off already. However, you can just keep yours on if you want, because it is quite strong. Basically, unless you're getting items that are so much higher item level than what you have, you can actually probably keep this on until the season starts, even without having a new tier set to put on. Like not when the Mythic raid opens, but when the Heroic raid opens and stuff. You can probably keep it on until that week, so it won't even really matter the preseason. However, like, I took off my shoulders because I have 587 shoulders that I got, and I just wanted to put them on. And so I broke my tier set and whatever, so I just didn't care. But the tier sets are still working, and they still are strong. So as much power as they gave us in Season 4 of Dragonflight, if you have yours, it's still going to give you that. Now, if you're a new Ret Paladin, or you're just it's your first character, whatever, you're not going to have a tier set from Dragonflight, I guess, and so you just don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. This is the preseason. If you are using the old one, basically, you just you want to always have your blade up on the target before you judge, and you want to do that as much as possible. That's basically the long story short of it. Is always have your target burning with blade, with the expurgation, and then also then make sure you judge into that as much as you can. You also want to spend before you judge, right? You don't want to judge into a judge. You want to judgment, spend, and then if your judge is ready, judge again. But that's the long story short of how the Dragonflight tier set works. And at the same time, if you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it. It is what it is. As far as that goes, it's not a big deal. You will lose damage by taking it off, and you know, even if I haven't simulated it to know the exact item level that you need to get. That the item level overwrites the amount of power you get from the tier set. But at some point, obviously, it will. And, you know, that's just pretty much up to you. Do you want to play with the tier set or not? Do you just want to put on new higher level gear, have more health? You know, play however you want to play in that case. This is one of those things that's the preseason. It really doesn't matter. But I figured I will talk about that because it is active still, and it is still powerful in its own way. Trinkets is the next thing we normally go over. Trinkets, again, this is not going to be very important for this preseason. However, if you want to have some trinkets ready when Mythic 0 dungeons open up and stuff like that, if you just want to have your trinkets ready to go to like do the best in those that you can, what you're looking for, I don't know every single world quest trinket and all that kind of stuff, right, off the top of my head. I know some of the dungeon trinkets, but basically you want trinkets that have like an on-use mastery effect, for example, is going to be really good. To increase your mastery by a really high amount, like, and then you can either macro it in with your Wake of Ashes, or you know, press it separately, however you want to do that. But you want like an on-use trinket with mastery, and other than that, just play with what you want. Strength, mastery are the kind of stats you're looking for on your trinkets, but it doesn't matter too much there. Again, for the preseason, I just wanted to mention, and just in case you do want to be ready to go for Mythic Zeros. Oh, I found a trinket that has an on-use mastery effect, and it's 580 eye level or something. Like, yeah, you probably should wear that for when the dungeons start, Mythic Zero dungeons start up, and Heroic Raid starts up, and all that. Crafted gear and embellishments. So let's first talk about the Dragonflight crafted gear and embellishments. So this is the embellishment that gave mastery, which is what most rets were using in Season 4. This is still incredibly strong. So it's going to be really hard for me to replace my boots, for example. Basically, I would just say here, let's say you have boots that have a ton of mastery on them. See what your mastery is with your embellishment on from Dragonflight Season 4. And then take them off and put on the new boots. And if the new boots mastery is close or higher than that, then it's probably better, because it's going to have more strength on it. It's going to have more health on it for your defensive purposes. It's going to have more of whatever other stat it has on it than what your current one has. And so as long as it's kind of close, like as long as it's kind of close, like I wouldn't want to put on boots that take me from 37% mastery to like 30% mastery or something like that, probably. But if it's like 37 to 36, 37 to 35, then that's fine, because I'm gaining more strength, I'm gaining more haste, or whatever else is with it. So that's kind of how I would go as far as embellishments go. As it comes to crafting here in this preseason, I'm not going to worry about this too much. Crafts are going to be extremely expensive early on, and I would just wait personally before I spend a lot of gold doing it. If you're a blacksmith or something like I am, yeah, you can craft yourself some stuff if you like, 100%. But, you know, I wouldn't worry too much about getting your own crafted stuff for the preseason. We will obviously go over this in a much more extensive way when Season 1 comes out. And then the last thing we normally talk about is consumables, enchants, and gems. Again, I'm not going to advise that you spend a ton of gold enchanting, gemming, if you even can get a gem stacker right now, and all that kind of stuff for this preseason. However, consumable-wise, you want like the flask that has mastery on it is like the best flask for us. There is a weapon enchant that gives mastery. I think there is one that's better than that. But if that one's super cheap or something because it's not the best one, maybe you could put that on your weapon. Obviously, if you wanted to enchant your rings, you would put the mastery on your rings. Gems, generally speaking, you're going to put mastery on them. Again, this kind of goes with the whole stats thing, though. If your other stats are super low, it can be valuable to get those stats up as well on like your critical strike and your haste. And again, we're not too worried about versatility. We're not worried at all about versatility in preseason. Probably not much in Season 1. Maybe later in the expansion we'll worry about versatility. But right now we're not worried about that at all. So we're not really valuing that too much at all. Strength is obviously good as well. So hopefully this wasn't too... I was trying to keep it casual and keep it quick. I know I have a tendency to be, like, focus on a lot of really small details. But yeah, hopefully this was good for some people to get you ready. I know I'm ready already to like get into doing some stuff, and it's still so far away. But yeah, I'm ready to actually get in there and see what Ret has and see how powerful we can be there. So that'll be it for this one. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel because it helps me out a lot. If you're already a subscriber, I encourage you to check out the Patreon. And other than that, everybody have a good one.